allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, would you like to call the roll?
Let's see, Councilor Driggs,
Present.
Councilor Edwards,
Present.
Councilor Clark. I can't hear Councilor Clark though. But
He's here. He's muted.
He's muted.
Councilor Perry,
Present.
Councilor DiMederos, Councilor Hilton,
Present.
Councilor DiMederos. She might have had to leave.
It's possible. Denise has been at the hospital all day and is still on call, so they may have actually even called her back. On to item 4, open session. Council ratification of Tiverton Executive Order 2020-07 relating to postponement of.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I am present. It's Donna.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Cook.
Yeah.
I was looking at pictures too. Sorry. Okay, Donna Cook,
Nancy,
I believe DiMederos.
wait a minute, Nancy, this is Denise. I'm back on.
Okay, so all present.
Yes.
Thank you. And in addition, actually, before we start, we're a little disorganized here. I would also like to note that Solicitor Marcello is here, as well as our Assistant Solicitor. I see Travis there. Welcome. I think Travis is first. Is this your first council meeting with us? No.
No, it's not. I've chimed in on the last phone conference.
Well,
First one.
welcome to Travis DaCosta, our Assistant Town Solicitor. And I would really like to give especially a big welcome to our new Town Administrator, Chris Cotta, who's been on board officially since Wednesday. And I have to say, and I think the town clerk will agree that we are incredibly happy to have him in that chair. So welcome to your first.
Very happy.
Very
Happy
happy.
to be here. So we get things done.
Welcome. I just want to, the reason why Travis is on the call, just to be, we're in the period of redundancy. God forbid that one of us gets sick. I want to just have to make sure the council had someone to represent them. So he's kind of in person in training right now. So.
So back to our agenda item, council ratification of Tiverton Executive Order 2020-07 relating to postponement of the financial town referendum effective March 26, 2020. So a little bit of background on this.
Madam President, may I just ask a quick question? Because I wasn't clear the way it was outlined. When is my ability to speak and the solicitor, after we do the ratification or before?
Well, that's how it's listed on the agenda.
What's how it's listed? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we could, I mean, there's no problem. If you have an issue with the ratification-ish project, we can kind of roll it into one. I would welcome your discussion. I think it's only fair that you be allowed to raise your objections if you have an objection regarding the ratification.
Okay, so if we go ahead with the ratification, then during the discussion part, I can just deal with my agenda item. Is that correct? Is that
That's what I would recommend to parliamentary.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So a little bit of background on this. You've heard that there have been daily, mostly twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, conference calls that have been going on with both the state and the League of Cities and Towns for the last couple of weeks. The majority of what those conference calls address are really the public health crisis. But the second looming crisis, which has come up and has been addressed, is the financial issue. And many communities, we're not the only one, all 39 communities are supposed to have a budget set by July 1st. But there are many of us that have some sort of either financial town meeting or a referendum, something that involves either a vote or a big public gathering, which is problematic right now, to say the least. So just the logistics of these kinds of either elections or financial town meetings are difficult. But what really became apparent over the weekend, and we've been talking about this for a while, is the state's ability to let us know what our revenue projections from the state will be for the next fiscal year. You probably heard that the state took out an enormous $300 million line of credit, just to try and get it through the end of this year based on all of the lost revenues. We have in our budget somewhere close to $13 million of revenue that comes to us from the state every year. So in order for the budget committee to set a budget that makes any sense at all, they have to know what our expenses are, but they also have to know what the revenue is going to be. And at this point, it's not clear how much revenue any municipality will be able to receive from the state next year. Over the weekend, on Sunday, on one of the calls, Senator Reid joined us to discuss the recent enormous federal bill that was passed with money earmarked for the states. What came out of that call, however, which no one was completely expecting, is that those funds that are coming, and I can't remember, I think it's something in the neighborhood of $125 million for Rhode Island, they can't be used to make up lost revenue. They can be used.
1.25 billion.
Thank you, John. They
No,
can.
billion, not million.
That's the state.
That's
Right.
Sorry, I meant to say billion. I said million. But those monies can't be used to make up at this point lost revenue. The Treasury Department is directing that that money is to be used for expenses related to the pandemic. So as of right now, that leaves the state of Rhode Island with an enormous hole in its budget, especially when you're in a state where, two of your significant revenue drivers are tourism and the gambling industry. So how much money we will be able to get from the state towards our next year's budget is completely unknown. And that was really apparent at the end of Sunday's call. We're not the only community in this boat. So while there had been some discussions going on and some other communities have already postponed their FTRs or their FTMs and pulled the trigger on it, we were kind of a little bit waiting to see. But after Sunday, it was pretty apparent that it would be very, very difficult for the budget committee to try and set any kind of operational budget with no viable revenue estimates from the state. And as I said, we get about $13 million a year in our budget from everything from school reimbursement and school aid to the library to our casino revenue. So at that point, it seemed a little bit prudent to postpone. I did speak several times with the chair of the budget committee. I consulted with Vice President DeMedeiros, as is required by the charter. I also spoke with Mike. In terms of the timing of this and why we did it, I'm really going to let Mike speak to that. The budget committee's deadline was this week. They were in the process of trying to schedule a couple of Zoom meetings, which they hadn't done before, to try and finish up. But I'm going to let Mike talk about why the timing of this was important.
So thank you. I'm assuming that everyone got the memo that was attached to your agenda topics. But the timing was important because as of last week, the 30th and 31st, the only deadlines that had passed are the submissions by the town council. The budget committee deadline, I think, was April 2nd, and it was important from a legal perspective to make sure everything is possible. Since we were going to extend the whole budget process anyway, that the budget committee, which really has the control of submitting a budget that's eventually voted upon, and the budget that is the premier budget that gets voted on by the townspeople, that deadline not pass, because then there would have been, I think, a greater legal issue whether or not, if we were to do something after that deadline passed, whether the budget committee could actually meet after that date and then revise their budget again. So that's primarily the reason why the deadline became important, to do it before that budget committee submission deadline passed. So basically, it cemented the status quo from that point forward, and all the deadlines that had not yet clicked on because of the new moving the date to 6/20, all the deadlines that not had yet passed can now be forwarded to reflect the new 6/20 date, June 20th date.
Madam President, I think I would like to just indicate why I wanted to get put on the agenda. And thank you, Mike, for that explanation of that particular timing. My concern is that, first, I really want to make it clear that I totally understand the town council president is given the power to issue emergency declarations. And under the, I think it's called EOP, the emergency plan that, Mike, you talked about in your memo, makes the town council president the chief executive officer. I understand that. I have no issue with that. What I am concerned about, and the reason I requested to be put on the agenda, is the manner in which the 2020-07 executive order dealing with the financial town referendum, and frankly, the two others that are on the agenda that I didn't even know about until they were put on the agenda. I'm just concerned the way they were executed and issued for the following reasons, and they really have to do with our local governing instruments. Both the Tiverton Town Charter and the Tiverton Governance Policy, specifically Section 7A, give clarity on the scope and the limits of the town council's president's powers in emergency situations. They both clearly make a distinction between imminent emergencies and other situations which do provide time for deliberation and discussion by the whole town council. And you know, obviously we all understand COVID-19 certainly constitutes an unusual and unforeseen emergency. However, I guess what really bothers me is that the governance policy 7A, which was ratified by the town council, describes what constitutes an emergency and clearly makes a exception to where the entire town council must be convened and talked for a matter which time or circumstances do not permit bringing before the entire town council. But they also, it urges at the end of 7A, at the end, the last sentence is regular occurrence of this practice, i.e. not bringing it before the town council, is strongly discouraged. And I really think 2020-07 in particular falls in that category. From all the timeline I have learned building up to when this executive order came out, which happened to be, I think it was March 31, the date of the first town budget committee scheduled meeting. There were a lot of discussions that were obviously going on. There was concern, which we all understand, about the state of the revenues and, you know, how are we going to do a budget in this time? But within that time, especially given that our charter under 406 gives the town council president within 24 hours notice to convene a town council meeting, I just think we're in uncharted territory, but that's what should have happened, that we should have been apprised of this building concern and what was going on, and the town council should have acted. I think the law requires it. I think we're in uncharted territory with this COVID-19, but that we can't let our home rule charter and governance policy be ignored. I think it's particularly important at this time to get the guidance, ideas, and discussions by the whole town council to provide a range of insights which are needed. And that frankly, it's for the protection of the Tiverton people that the preferred way for town council decisions is to be taken by the entire town council. And it's for the Tiverton citizens to obtain input, discussion, hopefully wisdom in open meeting sessions of their entire governing body. I think it's disrespectful to deprive them of this. So I think our law does demand this, that unless the threat or danger is imminent, in other words, if there were time and circumstances to permit involving the entire town council, that should be done, and it should have been done. And then further, that this is bolstered by Rhode Island General Law, Section 3015-12B, which is cited as the authority for the town council president's authority to execute these orders. But it too states the town's chief executive officer, in exercising these powers with respect to emergency, must do so not consistent with other provisions of law. And I think our town charter and governance policy really outline a path that we should have followed. And then finally, my really big other problem that hasn't, I don't think anyone's talked about this, of not inconsistent with other law under that 3015-12B. That executive order 2020-07 attempting to move that moves the financial town referendum. The FTR was created and by language in the and voted by the citizens of Tiverton in their Tiverton Home Rule Charter. And the Tiverton Home Rule Charter was ratified by the Rhode Island General Assembly. So it's become the equivalent of a state statute. And under that same provision of 3015-2A, the governor is the one pursuant, in this case to her, emergency powers, that has the power to alter or amend state statutes or procedures under state statutes. But there's no reference of or indication that any such permission was sought or obtained from the governor by the town council president. So I feel on both these cases that these orders were, in a sense, legally outside what should have happened, both pursuant to our charter, especially our governance policy, and then the power of the fact that our home rule charter was ratified by the Rhode Island Assembly. I noticed in the backup material that one of the things was given, I think, by the town of Situate, that they changed their financial town meeting or something, but they don't have a charter. That wasn't in their charter. They're different than we are. So those are my serious concerns about what we're doing here and how we're practicing, especially the last 3 executive orders. I think the town council was eliminated and kept out of something that they should have been involved in, very strongly should have been involved in. And I'm very concerned that we don't have, the town council president alone does not have the ability to amend a state statute. So those are my comments.
Hold on,
Thank you.
hold
Thank
on,
you.
one thing at a time. I see John would like to say something, but John, before you do, would you mind if I let the solicitor respond to this and then I'll come right back to you? Mike, would you like to?
So sure, I just want to quickly, let's deal with the last argument first, that only the governor can change a state statute, and that is true. But also in the same statute that I cite, it says that the chief executive officer of the town has the same powers and responsibilities, and it can exercise those powers equal to those of the governor. It doesn't say equal, but similar to those of the governor. And so therefore, if the council president, if the governor can move a state statute and a charter, which I agree with you that it's been ratified, then certainly under the same statute that I cite, and I think it's cited in that brief, is that the town council president also has the authority because her powers are coterminous with those of the governors. So that is, I believe, that first issue.
You really telling me that under that statute?
Yeah, it's right. I cite it. We cite it in our brief. We say.
But what I take it to mean is that on the level of the town, that the council president has the same powers that a governor has at the state level. You can't tell me that our town council president could come in and amend some state statute that has nothing even to do with.
Well, I think if I understood your argument was that because the town charter was ratified by the General Assembly, which makes it a super statute, then because the governor can amend a super statute, so can the council president, and that's pretty much what the law says. But let me step back for a second. The other thing that I just want to be very clear, we can respectfully disagree, and I appreciate that. And my job as the town solicitor is to give the best legal advice that I can give the town, and that's what I believe we did. What prompted the memo to begin with was your assertion that the Patricia Hilton was not the chief executive officer of the town and had no authority whatsoever to
I
issue.
understand that, and I've agreed with your argument that she does.
The solicitor, one at a time, please let the solicitor have the floor and finish.
Thank you. That's what sent us on the memo that originally. So I'm glad you're satisfied now that you agree that under the authority granted by the state statutes and by looking at the emergency operations plan, that there is no question that the council president is the chief executive officer. And obviously, as you also indicated, she has the authority to issue executive orders. Now, let me just say something about the executive order. The executive order declaring a state of emergency, which I believe was at 20, I think you said it's 2007. Is that what the number is? Or no, 20.
Actually, 2007, interestingly,
Trish.
it's the one executive order that doesn't call it a declaration of emergency. It's actually distinct from all the other executive orders before
Right.
that.
So
You're not letting Mike finish. I think you're talking about the original state of emergency, Mike,
No.
is.
Yes. I need. What's the number of that one? I'm sorry, I don't know the number of that one.
That one's 2002.
Okay, so in 2002, that's the one that declares a state of emergency.
Correct.
Now that can be declared, as we indicated, under the charter and under the statute. That has to be ratified by the town council, and that was ratified by the town council, because obviously by doing so, you are actually putting the town in a state of emergency, which is a heightened state, and it triggers all these other powers that flow from that. That was ratified, and let me just say this: after that is ratified and it's extended, which it has been, and it's going to be extended further tonight, I believe. There really is no other provision for the council to go back and ratify things that follow from that. In other words, it is because of the declaration of emergency that allows the council president, as the CEO, to issue then executive orders which she deems necessary for the health, protection, welfare of the town and whatnot. However, the council president has made it clear to me, because she does not want to be the Lone Ranger out there, that she has indicated that every executive order that she issues subsequent to the declaration of states of a municipal emergency, that she is bringing back to the town council for their further ratification. She's not required to do that under the law, and so she is including the council to follow up and ratify every action that she takes at an executive level from here and forward. Again, let me repeat: she is not required under the law, once the town council ratifies a declaration of state of emergency, to go back to the council every time it issues an order. However, because of the controversy, obviously, not only controversy, but because this is uncharted territory, she feels more comfortable getting the council's authority and approval of every action that she can take when reasonably possible. And that's exactly what we're doing tonight. And we explained to you why it was necessary for her to issue the one on the financial referendum, because of the impending deadlines.
I understand you.
Mike.
It's John. I'm going to go to John next. Everybody has a chance. John.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple of points here. So, given the gravity of what we're discussing here, I was appreciative that that Solicitor Marcello was able to send this very lengthy memorandum, followed up with exhibits. But to be perfectly honest, I was unclear coming into this what the objection from Councilor Driggs was going to be, primarily because the request to be on the agenda was borderline illegible and there was no backup whatsoever. Now, it seems like Councilor Driggs has a very well thought out argument, and I think it would have benefited the rest of the council to have received that prior to, rather than, just have to try and figure out what is being said on a very tough medium to follow, because, again, it's not like we're sitting across from each other. It is, it's over the phone, and, sometimes it doesn't come through all the way. I mean, I couldn't keep up with what Councilor Driggs was saying. So I would appreciate, if there's going to be such lengthy objections as one of these in the future, if we could just get the actual backup with it, so I can be prepared to participate in a discussion rather than just look at what the solicitor has put in front of us. So that's my only offer of the suggestion. Councilor Driggs, is for the future, if you can type it up and email it so that I can understand what the actual objection is, and then follow it up with some backup, that would be awesome.
Councilor DiMederos? Denise?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to make it clear that everything that Trish has done, she has run it by me. And let me tell you, it's very difficult because I'm at the hospital and I think she's doing a fantastic job. And I think this is just political bullshit right now.
Okay.
Trish Hilton is doing the best
Hold
she
on.
possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to step in as a parliamentarian. Let's not question people's motives, whatnot. Let's just take facts. The legitimate legal issues have been raised. We can all deal with that. I know that I'm trying to be fair to everybody as a parliamentarian. I know Councilor DiMederos, as a nurse, you're under a lot of pressure right now, and I appreciate everything you do. I'm going to do a clap like everyone else is giving it in your profession. But let's keep it positive. These are legitimate legal issues, and they need to be just addressed in a impartial forum.
Does any other counselor have a comment that they'd like to make?
Yes, I would. This is Donna. I don't have an issue with all the explanation from Solicitor Marcello regarding the CEO, and but my issues are the same with Town Council Governance Policy 7A with the actions of the President. Today on April 6th, I'm being asked to ratify executive orders, and I feel there was no effort made to speak to the councilors nor meetings regarding the financial health of the town to date and impact to the budget by COVID-19. The executive orders, there was knowledge that the revenues were going to be impacted, that's why one of the reasons I put in to, whether it's done or not, that I was so concerned that I put in for try to get a landfill extension. I know there's money there for the landfill, but there's an awful lot of expenses that deal with the closing of the landfill. So I already knew there was problems. And then I find there's, again, there's lots of conference calls with agencies and different other things, but yet there was no calling of a town council try to explain all the gravity of the situation. Then I find out from the budget committee that it was canceled, and this rumor was stay tuned. And I thought to myself, well, how come I don't know what's going on? And the next thing I know, I have an executive order number 7 and 9. They're signed right after the meeting on Saturday, which has 331, which was actually 328. And one was dealing, of course, with the FTR, and the other one's dealing with the tax payments. And I thought to myself, well, who picks these dates for the tax payments, and are they random dates? And could I move it to June 10th? I mean, I have no information to deal with these dates or these executive orders. I didn't have any input. I have no reports to look at. I have no forecast of budget shortfalls or revenue. I heard a little bit tonight, no plan of action, no plan B. I have no background information what constituted the reason for the move. I got a little bit tonight, no financial information, short-term solutions, no resolution going forward. So how am I supposed to determine what is the right course of action? There's been, I call them internal meetings, which I'm not privy to. And I don't know who was at the meetings, who listened to them. Are there any minutes of these discussions to help me? I can't do my fiduciary responsibility for the town residents and just ratify something when I really don't, I feel blind by the whole thing. I just don't feel comfortable with it. When it comes to financial matters, I think as a town councilor, I should have all the information, and I just don't. And it really bothers me. And that's my statement. I don't know what else to say about it.
And Madam President, can I just respond quickly to?
Actually, I'd like to have a turn to respond at some point. I'd like to see if any other counselor would like to speak, because I realize that there are differing opinions on this, but we have business to conduct tonight. So is there Mr. Clark, Mr. Perry, would you like to weigh in?
This is Steve. No, I'm just trying to understand the issues here. I didn't have a strong position on this, so please continue.
Mr. Perry?
Joe Perry. I feel that what's happening right now with everything that's going on, I think that we just have to rely on the council president, the solicitor, and the acting administrator to act in the best interest of the town. And I think that's what they've been doing.
So, all right. Since I seem to be the subject of this, I'd like to respond. So first of all, with regard to 7A in the governance policy, it does say when emergency action is required by the president on behalf of the town council for a matter which time or circumstances do not permit bringing before the entire council, the president may act in his or her best judgment so long as he or she attempts to first consult with the vice president, and which I did. Now, I'm not particularly happy about signing these executive orders, and I hope that there aren't going to be too many more of them, because I think now that the state has sort of gotten its feet under it a little bit on this pandemic, that should slow way down. But we do have to move quickly. I don't do this without consulting, especially with the solicitor, who I've had numerous conversations with, as well as the vice president. Now that Mr. Cotta's here, he'll certainly, I think, be in many cases taking the lead on some of these things, because he'll be taking over with some of these conference calls. So, it's not something that I do lightly, but at the same time, we have to keep the government moving, and we have to respond. As far as all this information that somebody knows that everybody doesn't know, that's the whole point. Nobody has the information right now, particularly when it comes to going forward in the future financially. We did hear, as I said, very late on Sunday from Senator Reed's office that the money coming from Washington is not the solution. Therefore, all 39 municipalities are going to be in some difficulty in trying to figure out the budget. To be honest, and I will just say this, if the FTR wasn't such a constant source of lawsuits and Superior Court complaints and charter complaints, I might not have been so worried about preserving the Budget Committee's ability to go back to the budget. But in consultation with Mike and knowing the history in Tiverton, there was a real fear that if the Budget Committee went forward and handed that in, that they wouldn't get another bite at the apple. Somebody could make a legal argument that said their deadline's passed, you didn't postpone it until afterwards, and so now the Budget Committee couldn't go back and continue their work. And I think that that's just ridiculous. And I don't see any reason why the town would want to have that happen. As far as you're not being able to weigh in, that's the point of this meeting here. When I sign these emergency orders, even though I guess in theory they could stand, I have no intention of doing that. I don't want that responsibility. I do think the council weighs in. You can all vote no tonight. When any of these are going in front of you for you to ratify, essentially you're getting your opportunity to the vote. So that order, in my mind, is a temporary thing. It stands only till the council makes the final determination. That's what we're here to do tonight. So if you're not happy with it, vote it down. That's completely fine. But as far as some other, I take offense at some of the comments that Ms. Cook made about some sort of secret meetings or I don't know what you want to call them, or these information or these minutes. There are no secret meetings. There are conference calls that are attended by mayors, town council presidents, town administrators, and solicitors. Most of the time, Mike Marcello's been on all of these calls with me. As soon as Chris came, I looped him right in. He's taking over these conference calls now that he's here, which is great. So they're not secret meetings, but they're really to discuss and bring forward the day-to-day issues of what's going on with this pandemic, as well as the issues that are starting to come up around the finances. And just to let you know, in terms of signing the postponement, I will tell you, I don't think this is going to be the only postponement. Hopefully it won't have to be as an emergency, but it's entirely possible. And one of the things that's being discussed, and the League of Cities and Towns is really taking the lead on this on behalf of the rest of the municipalities, is that there are discussions going on right now about the possibility of delaying everybody's budgets. And essentially allowing municipalities to work over their prior budget and somehow either via the General Assembly or the governor to continue with the existing tax levy, at least for the first quarter or part of the first quarter of the next fiscal year, because it's entirely possible that there won't be solid revenue estimates in time for anybody to set a budget by one. But at least this way, the budget committee, their right to go back and take another bite at the apple when we know more is preserved. It's not challengeable, and that's the important thing. So,
may I say something, Trish?
I'd like to respond.
It won't take long. It won't take long.
Nancy, please let Nancy and Ms. Cook say something. Nancy has I think has the right to say.
Yeah. So I just, and then I want Ms. Cook also. I just want to respond to Michael, because I understand, and to Patricia, I understand the answer you gave, but it didn't deal with our governance policy 7A, that if time and circumstances permit, the town council president is obligated to go to the entire town council. And everything I've heard so far, and especially now from President Hilton about the number of conversations and people with everybody except the town council. And I just find that almost unbelievable. So wait, let me just finish. That's the first thing. And then it frankly caused me even greater concern to hear President Hilton tonight talking about, I just didn't want to see this, I didn't want to see that. You know what? It's not just up to her. The town council has a role to play in here. And as far as if it turns out and making the decision that she didn't want the budget committee to try to orchestrate what happens when the totally expected downturn in revenues is going to come on, the budget committee is the one organization in our town that's set to try to work on balancing a budget when the revenues aren't going to be as expected. And then frankly, Rhode Island general law totally covers the situation. I think it's 45-2-3-2 specifically has figured out a remedy for an emergency causing a failure of a city or town to approve an annual appropriation, that the same amounts appropriated in the previous fiscal year shall be available for each department and division, then subject to certain provisos. So I'm not sure the emergency nature, but I still say nobody has addressed the fact that our own governance policy says if there was time, and there was time, there were a lot of meetings went on, and League of Cities and Towns, people, everyone, President Hilton just said she spoke to everybody but the town council. And yet in the middle of all those meetings, the town council had a special meeting Saturday morning, 2 days before this came out. mention was made of any issue.
That's not correct. That's, I'm sorry, that's simply not correct.
That is not
What's
correct.
It's just
We
not
had,
correct.
we had a meeting Saturday morning.
We did have his meeting on Saturday morning, and we didn't hear from Senator Reed until, and the governor's office until after that meeting on the following Sunday. You know, keep in mind that in order to have a meeting at this point, you still have to give 48 hours notice. You have to.
24 hours, according to the charter, 24 hours. You can call a special
Mrs.
meeting.
Briggs, you're out of order. I have the floor right now. You still have to, under open meetings laws, you still have to host a meeting, 48-hour notice. We have to set up these Zoom calls, and we have to do all of this. It's not all that simple. It's
Madam President, 406,
Excuse me,
24
please.
hours.
All right, listen, hold on. Let's all take a deep breath, please. Let's all take a deep breath. One at a time, and then we can have, this is a very good debate. I'm going to weigh in at the end, but let's do it one at a time. Council President Hilton, go ahead, finish, and I think Ms. Cook wants to say something, and then we can leave it. But I want to weigh in, and then we can hopefully wrap this up. And Nancy, if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer it. Go ahead, Council President.
You know, I take offense at the I thing. You know, again, none of what happened with just me. Solicitor Marcello has been involved in all of this and has been advising us all the way through, as I have consulted with Denise as required. And yet again, you know, I'm not going to go to motive, but essentially what I see, or am I feeling like, is a tempest in a teapot, because the fact is this order, you know, if you don't vote for this tonight, you have every opportunity to vote yes or no. If you don't vote to ratify this, then it doesn't stand. And as far as, you know, as far as your contention, Nancy, that we don't need to do this, things go forward. Here's what you don't know, which is that, yes, you can carry forward your existing budget from the year before. That's allowed under the law. Any municipality can do that. You know what you can't do? You cannot levy a tax. You cannot levy a tax. So we could carry forward last year's budget, but we would have absolutely no revenues to do it. This has come up. These are the sorts of things that are getting worked on at, you know, at the league level, at the state level, and frankly, with the solicitors. There's a whole group of solicitors, municipal solicitors, that are working on this, including Mike. You know, in part, I ended up in this role because we didn't really have, Nancy and I were trying to split some of the work for the town administrator stuff. She couldn't take it all on, so I took over the conference calls. I fully expect that the town administrator will be more of the driver along in being able to follow on and go forward and working with a lot of these things. But, you know, I'm not sure how much more you want from me. I will say this, we're all tired. We're all working hard. Some of us are putting literally, you know, tens and tens and tens of hours a week into essentially, you know, a job that we never expected would be this much work, just trying to keep on top of all of this. And you do have an opportunity to weigh in. I explained to you exactly why I did it. I explained it to a simple thing. I don't know more than that, other than we don't have a revenue picture from the state. That's basically all of the information. I'm sharing with you everything that I know about that. So you can choose to ratify this or not ratify this.
Trish, I'd like to make a motion.
Hold on. Ms. Cook has an opportunity to speak, and I think Nancy, and then I'd like to speak too, if I could.
All right. I do.
Why can't I make a motion?
Because the parliamentarian tell you can't.
You're the parliamentarian, Denise.
Yeah. My issue is that there is another way to have informed us, Trish, and it's done all the time, whether it's a town administrator weekly report or whether, and even Nancy Mello as acting or interim or acting town administrator sent out a little report about DPW or something else that was going on. So I think it would have been helpful going forward if who's ever listening to these conference calls to give us a heads up. As long as as long as we don't respond, it seems, or just to that person. Am I right, Michael? That's okay?
Correct, but yes.
Yeah, I think.
If you're getting a report, just much like you got a report last week from the town administrator, that's fine.
So I think that's what's missing here. And it lends itself to what the heck is going on, and it makes you feel uncomfortable and you feel like you're left out of the loop. And frankly, it looks like we really do need this information so that we can help with input for doing the right thing for the town. So I think going forward, and I'm not going to make work for people, but if this is going to go on, it would be very, very helpful if there could just be a note out to the council. This is what we're dealing with. This is what they said the numbers are, but we're not allowed to respond because then it would be a quorum. But at least I would know what's going on. That's all. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Was it my turn, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. I just have two things to add. The first is, President Hilton, you keep talking about, I notified the vice president, which was I expected to do. You're looking at that one section of that 7A governance policy that precedes.
Well, I'm looking at
Excuse me. You're looking at that one section in your act, the part that says if time and circumstance permit, the entire town council should be involved. And we are not involved. I really resent that. It's wrong. And then to Donna's point, I disagree, frankly, with Councilor Cook in the sense that I don't think the issue is whether or not you give us a report. The issue is not whether we should be involved in the decision for certain kinds of decisions that come if time and circumstance permit. And you say that we now have the chance to weigh in, but what we don't have is the benefit of the hours and hours and hours. If you put in getting whatever information you've gotten, and I don't have that information. We didn't have the ability to ask questions, to delve into questions we might have, which, believe it or not, might not have been the ones you thought to ask. And it's just wrong. So I think getting back to what Councilor Cook said in the beginning, how do we go about ratifying something where we don't really have a clue what we're ratifying?
I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead. John?
Me?
Yep.
So
How about me?
I still want to, yes. I mean, I can't see you, Councilperson Medeiros, but hold on, you'll have a chance to, but I do want to clear up some legal issues that have been touted and clear up some of the misconceptions, but go ahead, John.
So very quickly, one, I think we should, before we engage in these discussions, I think we should have a motion on the floor because that would give those of us the ability to call the question. I think that would be a good thing. And then two, just for Councilor Driggs and that point, the point about having all the information, I really want to reiterate again. I flew into the objections here tonight, and they were obviously well thought out. I flew in completely blind, having no clue and no ability to do the backup research in order to prepare for this. So, if we're going to have these lengthy objections and they're well thought out objections, I think that the entire council should have the benefit of seeing those in front of them, as we had the response from the solicitor in front of us.
Okay, so let me just go ahead, Councilwoman Medeiros, if you could, and then I'm just going to wrap it up, and then we can hopefully move on.
I always thought that we needed a motion on the floor before discussion.
All right, hold on. I'm going to take blame for that because if you remember at the beginning of this meeting, Councilwoman Driggs asked, she had something on the agenda and she thought, before it would be unfair to ratify something and her not have the opportunity to raise her objection to it. So that's why it's kind of rolled into one. So that's why we did it. We were trying to be fair, and she had legitimate objections and wanted to comment on it. So that's where we are. So that's, I didn't expect it to be this long, but It is what it is. I guess I learned my lesson, but go ahead.
I think we're being more than fair. I think there needs to be a motion on the floor, and then we have the ability to move this motion.
Okay.
This discussion is getting too lengthy.
Thank you. Council President, if I could just have the last word, or just from a legal perspective, I just want to clear up a couple things.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
So I don't have the council policy. I think you guys are reading from a policy statement, 7A. Is that council rules and regulations?
No, it's town council governance policies ratified by the town council.
Right, but it's the rules and regulations of how to conduct the meeting, basically, correct?
Well, no. It covers,
Yeah.
it covers that, and partly it goes on to other governance actions. And this is under other governance actions. It talks about what ability of the town council president.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Mike, just so you know, it essentially restates what's in the charter.
Okay.
That if the president needs to take action, they are supposed to first consult with the vice president, just like it says in the charter. And then it says if in a matter for which time and circumstances do not permit bringing before the entire council. And then it says in all emergency events, the town council president will transmit a message as soon as reasonably possible, which frankly, I think in my mind, when you send out the declaration, which explains what it is, you are transmitting to the council what you've just done. But
I agree.
Let me, okay, thank you for that clarification. So let me just go back, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. I know it's tough for a lawyer, and I know Councilor Driggs, I appreciate you're a lawyer and you get legal stuff, but the thing that we're forgetting is, number one, we are under a state and local declared emergency. That is a game changer from day one. And I think we hope we agree on that. That changes the whole rule and regulations of how the government works. Now, okay, so hold on. Number one, so that decision, once it was ratified by the town council, which it was, does imbue council president with powers that she normally have absent the declaration of emergency, much like the governor is doing on a day-to-day basis, closing businesses, whatnot. We're doing the same thing at the local level, and in this case, we extended a deadline that's in the charter by 30 days. We didn't terminate it, we extended it by 30 days. That's number one. Number two, the actions of the council president as the chief executive officer are I think is well put out in our brief. And I think I'm glad that you have conceded that the council president is the chief executive officer during a time of emergency. I don't think we have an argument with that. The idea that there were all these meetings, I want to just clarify that, because there are a lot of meetings. Very few of them have to do with finances, and these meetings happen. They've happened on a weekly basis, a daily basis, since the governor declared a state of emergency. It was only because of the approaching deadline of the Budget Commission and I outlined in a private email to both you and Ms. Cook the exact sequence of events that went down, which lead and I stand by that. So there wasn't 1,000 discussions going on about should we do this, but for the financial. So I just want to make clear that. So again, I outlined how it was brought to my attention. I put it forward, and we looked at the statute, we looked at the rules and regulations, and we believe, and I still believe, that the council president had the authority to do what she did. It is now before you to either ratify or not ratify it. In a perfect world, we would involve we could call a council meeting with 48 hours notice, and we can put it on for a discussion. But that's the very nature of emergency declarations and power. Sometimes decisions have to be made quickly to preserve people's rights, responsibilities, and whatnot. We do not know what the state is going to do with other towns. We do not know how the closure of the casino is going to play out, how it might affect your revenues. So the council president thought it would be a prudent thing to do prior to the date of that Budget Commission date slipping by, to extend it by, again, 30 days. That's the issue that's now before you. The executive order had an expiration date, I believe, of April 7th, and that's the date. So now you have an opportunity to weigh in, and that's where we are. I think, so I appreciate that, and I just don't want people to think that there was all these secret meetings going on. I take open government very seriously. I've built my own political career on being open and transparent, and I can assure you that there were not secret meetings or secret forums discussing how or why this should happen. It was between myself, the council president, and very limited to the town clerk as to what date we should extend it to. And that was the nature of my discussions with any elected official. And I just want to remind you, Mr. Carter didn't start until April 1st. So up until that date, it was really the acting town administrator, Ms. Hilton, and myself. And that's where we got. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor Marcello. And I just want to end with two things.
Hold on a second. I thought Denise wanted to make.
Can I just have two?
I want to make a motion.
Let's make a motion. So Denise, did you have a motion that you wanted to make?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ratification of the Tiverton Executive Order 2020-07 relating to the postponement of the financial town referendum effective March 26, 2020.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Let's have Nancy speak and then we can vote on this, please. Thank you.
I just have 2 points I want to make. I am not accusing you by any means of having secret meetings, Solicitor Marcello. I hope you understand that. I'm not suggesting you did anything but be above board and transparent. I am objecting to, I'm having problems with two conclusions you're making. That because a state of emergency has been declared, that somehow that alters and affects the impact of our town council ratified governance policy 7A, which does require, if time and circumstance permit, that the town council president convene the town council, the entire town council. So that's the first thing. And I'm drawing a blank, I'm sorry. I guess that was, and just that there was time and circumstance, and what we're looking for is not the ability to ratify or not ratify, but have been, that I think the law required that we be involved in the decision. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and I respect your opinion. I just want to note for the record that as of tonight, that was the first time that you've raised that issue with me from any type of perspective.
I understand that.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you. I think you have a motion on the floor, and I appreciate the debate. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other comment other than, because now as Councillor Driggs has been complaining, this is your time to be involved and ask the question. So does anyone else have a question or a comment? Mr. Cotta, I think, is raising his hand.
All I would emphasize is that of every meeting that I've been to, and there's been quite a few of them or assisted with, every mayor, solicitor that's involved in these are having the same kind of issues that Mrs. Driggs is having. But the largest piece that falls behind it is nobody in the state can assure where the revenue is going to come from next year and what will happen. And it appears from most of their standpoints that the revenue is going to look like what happened back in the early 2000s when all the general aid was cut and all the cities and towns had to struggle with trying to figure out where their budgets were going to go. And it was a nightmare back then, and it appears to be that it's going to be the same thing now. So to prohibit the budget committee from ever going back to looking at the budget, if it went through, kind of really would have put them in a very, very difficult spot. So I'm not weighing in one way or the other, but I'm just trying to let you know that every city and town is struggling with the very same issues, struggling with the revenue issues and their legal issues as to whether or not their charters are applied.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, so I'm going to take a roll call vote. Councillor Driggs?
No.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes.
Councillor Perry?
Yes.
Councillor Clark?
Yes.
Councillor DiMedeiros?
Yes.
Councillor Cook?
No.
And I'm a yes. Okay. Moving on to the next ratification. And by the way, this next item I didn't sign. It was prepared. I didn't sign it because I didn't actually think the timing was such that it needed to be, which is about temporarily prohibiting open burning and burning permits in the town.
Okay.
You know, we're asking a lot of our firefighters right now. Last weekend, there were some fires. There was one that got out of control. There were also a few complaints from people. This is a respiratory disease. There are people who are a little worried about that. But we're also really asking a lot about of our first responders right now, the police and the fire. You know, the rest of us get to stay home and try and be safe, and they don't. So minimizing unnecessary interaction and runs is not a bad idea. Chief Malo is also in support of temporarily putting a hold on this. I had it drawn up because there were some fires last weekend. There was one that got out of hand, and some complaints, but then this weekend it was going to rain, so it didn't seem like it was likely that we were going to have much of a problem over the weekend. So I've actually not signed this one. I'd like to sign it, but I'm offering it up to you guys for discussion.
So do we have to make a motion first to even discuss it?
That would be good if there's a motion. If somebody wants to make a motion to, I guess, have me sign this and ratify it, because I haven't actually signed this one.
Well, would we have discussion first before we have you sign?
Even if you make a motion, someone second, you can always vote it down, but you should put it on the table.
I'll make the motion.
All right, so Denise has made a motion for me to sign this and for you to ratify this. Is there a second? Okay, so I don't have a second. So I guess we're not gonna.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Discussion. I think you've got Chief Malo's recommendation there, and it's, are there any questions, discussion, comments?
This is Donna. I'm glad that he wrote this up. It makes a lot of sense. The only thing with human nature is that instead of knowing who's got permits, when you don't give a permit, people are going to do it anyway. So now you don't know who's got a permit and who doesn't. So that makes me wonder if this is going to work, to just tell people they can't have a permit. At least you would know who's going to do the open burning. Now you're not going to know. They're just going to do it anyway.
Well,
With no permit. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Joe Perry?
Yes, Joe.
I think the reason he's doing this is that they're chasing a lot of calls for burning complaints when they have, you know, they're really running ragged doing rescue calls, and they don't need the added aggravation, so to speak, of chasing nuisance calls. And if they just did this for a short time, just put it out that no permits are being given, and when they do get somebody who calls, they know they can go there and just tell them put it out. So I think that's the reason why he's doing this, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Chris, Kata.
So there's with everybody home, everybody's cleaning, there's a lot more people doing this now because everybody's at home. And it's creating much more exposure for the fire department to have to be out there and be exposed to people when they really shouldn't have to be. And I think he's just trying to minimize the exposure for his staff. And I think it's appropriate. You know, it'll get back to burning, and the fire department deals with people who don't do permits on a regular basis anyhow. It's just part of the nature of how they deal with it. So I agree with Donna, that's going to happen, and they'll deal with it like they do in the normal course of business.
Joe? I'm sorry, John. I've got
Thank
Joe under you. I'm saying Joe.
You got Joe Perry in the brain. So I would just say, I mean, you know, if the fire chief is in favor of this, generally want to support him because I think he's doing it for a reason. But you know, like others have mentioned, I think that we've got a lot of people who are at home, and I know that the follow-up to this is going to be an exacerbation on what happens at the landfill, because now if people can't stay home and burn, well, they're going to load up their trucks and they're going to drive to the landfill, and there's going to be more interaction with people there. So I almost feel like we're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And that's why personally, I'd like to see this not go into effect, and let's give it, let's give it another couple of weeks. And if they really are overrun with runs, then Councilor Hilton has the power to sign this thing and shut it down. But if it hasn't been a problem yet, I don't think we need to get out and stop this preemptively. I think that we should just, let nature take its course and, allow people who are cleaning up to do so away from everybody else, as opposed to going to the landfill to drop it all off.
I will remind people, by the way, there is a yard waste pickup coming very soon, by the way. So for those who have yard waste, there is yard waste pickup coming.
That's only like 6 bags, though. I mean, the rate people are cleaning now, there's a lot more to be taken down. I mean, my own yard is a perfect example. So,
any other comments? Yes, Denise.
I don't think people are understanding the severity of this. So if you have stuff to burn, wait. People need to stay home. Try to minimize your contact. I agree with what Chris is saying. The paramedics and the firefighters are working diligently, going to homes, trying to deal with what they're dealing with illnesses. So if you have stuff to burn, just wait. It's going to be a couple of weeks, or it might be a month, but it's not an emergency. So I think that this definitely needs to be done. People aren't really understanding what's going on here. So if you need to burn something, wait a month. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Anyone else?
Tricia, can I ask a question about?
Hang on one second. John had his hand up first.
I'm sorry. I
John, go
didn't see
ahead.
his hand.
I have one question for the solicitor, and I was trying to find this, but am I incorrect in thinking that basically from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we're not allowed to burn anyways?
Correct. That's in your current ordinance, I believe. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, it's right around the corner. That's the only issue I'd have with waiting.
So no one's allowed to burn right now anyway?
No, I'm sorry. You're not allowed to burn between Memorial Day and I think Labor Day, according to your ordinance, open burning.
Oh, I thought that was just on the weekends, but
No.
all right. I was just wondering, since we're all discussing it and Tricia hasn't signed it, does it have to be an executive order, or can it come from the town council now? Because we're all sitting here discussing it and could approve it or not approve it.
Well, that's what she's asking you to do.
Trish?
Her executive orders would only be good for 7 days anyway, again, as based upon her practice, not on the law, but it's instead of, if we can get the council to approve it or disapprove it now, we won't have to bring it back, so.
On the agenda as an executive order.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, Mike,
Can I ask
Joe Perry?
Yes, Joe.
Yeah, the order, the burning order now is no burning on Sundays from Memorial Day till Labor Day. You can burn Monday through Saturday if the weather conditions permit.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I read it this weekend and I thought it was all the whole period. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I think we should support Chief Mello on this. It kind of sends a message to anybody who's calling in and asking for a permit. Now, I know some people, like Donna said, will probably burn anyway, but I think there's enough people out there that realize the seriousness of this that they'll say, "Oh, I get it," and they won't burn. And another issue here, if we don't pass this, is that when they get a call, our guys have got to, jump in the truck and drive somewhere, and it puts them at risk if there's an accident or they come in contact with other people that they weren't planning to. They get to somebody's house, they've got to make contact with the residents. I mean, all of this causes people to come in close contact. And as you all know, it's a time when we should be doing everything we can to avoid that. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay, Nancy, you wanted to say something?
I had two questions. One is, if this had just been on a normal town council meeting agenda, it wouldn't be going out as an executive order, right? It would just be a town council.
We'd have to suspend the ordinance. Yeah, we'd have to rewrite the ordinance or temporary amendment of the ordinance or suspension of the ordinance.
I get it. Okay.
Okay, because I just feel like this is a perfect example where Chief Mallow wrote a really a good letter. It hasn't been signed, and so why is it going out as, why can't we do this at a normal town council meeting where we had ability to talk to Mallow? Like, we're all learning information now, but we don't have Mallow present to ask questions. And it just goes to my point again.
Well, Nancy, I'm not sure what you want me to do. That's why I didn't actually sign this one. Originally, it was drafted because last weekend there was a fire that got out of hand. There was burning. And by the way, there were some people who called to complain because this being a respiratory virus, they're worried that we shouldn't have people generating a lot of smoke. Had this been last weekend, if it was going to be 65 and sunny, I might have actually signed this. But then when it rained, I figured, okay, there's not going to be it's going to rain. There's not going to be a lot of burning. So, I said to Mike, how about, instead of me signing it, I'll bring it to the council and see what they think. So now's your opportunity to vote.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that it's come to the council. Here's my question.
Would you let me finish my sentence, please?
But you finished. I apologize.
If you vote yes, you vote yes. If you vote no, you vote no. So what is the council's pleasure here?
I ask a general question before I answer. If in these kind of meetings that we're having now with the council, is there an ability, this is a general question, if we wanted Chief Mallow to address us, how's that going to happen in the future? Like, could he have been here tonight to do this?
We could have invited him, I think probably via Zoom, if he has Zoom or a phone and he were available.
All right, I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
So.
Oh, I think the letter was enough, actually. He said what he had to say. So anyway.
Unless there's anything else, there's a motion and a second. So I'm going to take a roll call vote. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Councilor Driggs.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards.
Begrudgingly, yes.
Councilor Cook.
Yes.
Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Councilor Clark.
Yes.
Councilor DiMedeiros.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Which brings us to the third and last of these executive orders. And I did sign this one. This was based on timing. And frankly, this idea came again from what most of the other municipalities are doing, which is to extend the grace period for the April 1st property tax bills. Again, this was a matter of timing. Our normal extension only goes to April 10th. So if we had put it on the next council meeting, the extension essentially would have been over. A number of communities at the very end of March, very beginning of April, all were indicating that they were going to extend the grace period for an interest penalty on property tax payments. It's a tough month. There are a lot of people who've been laid off. There are a lot of people who are waiting maybe for an unemployment check or another check from the government. We've got small businesses that are struggling. So the thought was to just give them a little bit extra time if they needed to pay their fourth quarter property taxes and not have to pay a big interest penalty. I did sign it because if I hadn't signed it then, by the time I got around to it, essentially we'd be past the first grace period and it wouldn't have worked. Madam Clerk, I think, did help me with this again in consultation with with Mike. But Madam Clerk is acting treasurer, is acting town administrator, spoke with the treasurer and also with the tax collector. And I think, where are we now, Nancy, on tax collections for the quarter?
We're actually at 93 .4 something percent. Not quite sure what point, might be 0.5 some, but that is only 0.44% behind last year's. So, and I did speak with the tax collector specifically on this, and with the girls in that office that have been collecting. So my only concern was, as I stated to the council president and the solicitor, I would have liked to have seen it for all fourth quarter tax payments and not just property, but we'll live with what we have.
Chris, did you want to say something?
No, I totally agree with it. You know, there are so many people who are out of work struggling. The phone's been ringing off the hook about, you know, just the bag issue alone. Should we not have to pay for those? And but if this gives anybody any kind of relief, it would be beneficial for the town to help them. I don't think it's going to hurt our revenue too much. I think as far as our investment income or interest income, we're over budgeted for that right now. We're actually doing better than what we anticipated. But you know, I don't think it'll hurt us that much, even though we have other revenue issues that we're going to have to deal with between now and the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, and as Nancy said, we're basically at identically the same spot as we were at this time last year. So I think probably a relatively small number of people that might take advantage of it, but the ones who do might really need it. And this might just be a little less anxiety for them for a month.
In any event, you'll still get the money from the tax collection by the end of the fiscal year. So
right.
Yeah. Trish, I have one more comment, please.
Yes,
I just want to give a little shout out to the girls in the tax collection office. They really have been working diligently. The lockbox seems to be working well. They're getting 100 to 200 pieces of mail in the lockbox every day. The bank checks are all in, and we actually have the planning board clerk in there helping, and they've really done an excellent job. Not that all the AFSCME clerks in there have done great, but the collection office has really been struggling and recording every bit to try and get it up there. So we do owe them a bit of gratitude there.
Okay. So in that case, is there a motion or a second to ratify this? No.
Madam President.
Yes, John.
All right. So I'll make a motion to ratify council or the Tiverton executive order 2020-09, extending the grace period of fourth quarter property taxes and our tax payments.
Second.
There's a motion in 2 seconds. Are there any other comments or discussion?
Can we just note for the record who seconded it, please?
Joe and Denise, I think.
Yeah, thank you. That's for the viewing audience.
So I'll take a roll call vote. Councillor Driggs?
I'm going to vote no, not because I don't care about the taxpayers, but it's the process. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes.
Councillor Cook?
The same. I'm not against the grace period, but I don't like the way this was done, so it's no.
Okay. Councillor Perry?
Yes.
Councillor Clark?
Yes.
Councillor DeMedeiros?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And then finally, and Mike will explain this, item D, which is to amend an extension of the executive orders. A number of the executive orders that we've already ratified had specific dates on them, which they expire, I guess, around the quarantine, the Class B liquor licenses, the gatherings of people. So I think that Solicitor Marcello is suggesting that we extend the dates on those.
So just to make sure they still remain in force, because they did have an expiration date. Again, that was another bow to the council's ability to weigh in on these things, to have an expiration date. I would ask that they be extended out through the at least through May 15th. Obviously, the council has the authority to cut back on that date, but I think May 15th is probably a safe date at this point, given what we know.
Trish, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. I know you can't, it's hard because John's raising his hand but you can't see
I
that.
will let John do it if he wants.
Well, did he have a question, John? Go ahead, because you had your hand
Well,
up.
I was going to make a motion, but I also have a question for the solicitor. Can we do 1, 2, and 3 in one shot, or do we have to go one by one?
I would do it all in one shot if they're going to give all the same expiration dates. Just list it. Can I just ask the town clerk, what's the closest council date to May 15th? When would there be the next?
I don't know. Wait a minute, I'll get my calendar.
Hold on. So we can make them expire on that meeting date. So if we have a regular meeting, you'll have an opportunity to do it at a regular meeting instead of a special meeting.
The meetings in May are May 12th and the 26th.
So why don't we go to?
I have the 11th.
I mean, I'm sorry.
The 11th.
11th and the 25th.
Why don't we go to May 11th? If that's, well, my recommendation would go to May 11th.
Chris Cotto's raising his hand. Chris?
Is there any reason why you wouldn't extend it till the state declares the emergency over?
Well, that was my fallback position, but given the concerns that raised by some of the council, I just wanted to give a date certain. Yeah, but yes, that you could have it open ended. You could leave extended till such time as the state of the governor of the state of Rhode Island withdraws for a state of emergency. That could be another option as well.
Withdraws your state of emergency or changes a specific thing like quarantine, or, you know what I mean?
Right, true. You do that as well.
Yes, John.
All right. So, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to extend Executive Orders 2020-04, 2020-05, and 2020-06 to May 11th.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion.
Second.
Thank you, Denise. Is there any other discussion? In that case, Counselor Driggs,
Yes.
Counselor Edwards, Counselor
Yes.
Cook. Yes, Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Clark,
Yes.
Counselor DiMedeiros,
Yeah.
and I'm a yes. And that brings us to item E, a council vote to ratify the interim town administrator Christopher Cotto's employment agreement, which you have in your backup. And then I believe that Nancy also provided you with, I'm not sure I call it a fiscal impact exactly, because this isn't really required as a fiscal impact, but something that clarifies Mr. Cotto's compensation during the period that he's serving as interim. So is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, well, John and Denise. All right, John got the last one. Denise, go ahead and make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to ratify interim town administrator Christopher Cotto's employment agreement.
And John seconds. So there's a motion and a second. Is there questions or discussions or comment?
Tricia, this is Donna.
Yes.
I was noting on page 5 about holiday leave. It makes absolutely no sense. It's a 6-month contract, and it said employees shall be entitled to the same 12 days and 2 half-days of holiday leave as given to the town department heads. There's only 4 holidays within the 6 months.
Well, I don't think that anyone would take a holiday that they're not there, but I would think that Mr. Cotto, if he's whatever holidays he's there for, would, be entitled to take them off. But
I'm sorry, go ahead. That's correct. In trying to just lay out the number of holidays, we just listed the holidays. Obviously, the employment contract is for 6 months, so he's only entitled to those holidays that fall within that 6-month period. I don't think Mr. Cotto disagrees with that interpretation.
No, I don't disagree with it.
All right, I have one more question. it would be on page 4, F. The employee shall be eligible for 2 days per month for a maximum of 12 days for the term of his agreement to be used by the employee for sick, vacation, and personal time. And then any request for additional time should be in writing, which I don't have a problem with. It should be to the town council, what it's saying, and subject to town council approval, but it's just saying the council president should have sole discretion, which I just think there would, if that's the case, anything over more than 3 days, the discretion of the town council president. But if it's more than that, it has to be by the town council.
Anything more than 2 days, Donna, or 3?
I said I gave 3 days. If it's more than 3 days, then it would have to get town council approval.
Is that in the form of a motion, council?
That's my motion.
Okay.
I have a motion in a second. So is that to amend the motion?
That was to amend. Oh, yeah, sorry, to amend the motion.
Do I have to amend it? I'm amending.
That's fine. We're just amending the contract, so that's fine.
I don't.
Do I have to agree with that, though?
Say that again?
Do I have to agree that my motion's amended?
No, she can amend. She's just amended the document. That's fine.
So it's another motion.
Yeah, the motion to amend takes precedence over the underlying motion.
Can I ask a question, Councilor Cook?
What?
Are you amending F so that it would in essence read the employee shall be eligible to 3 days per month?
No, it's just dealing with the last part. Any request for additional part-time paid time off shall be made in writing by the employee to the town council. And subject, and then I'm saying that if it's 3 days or less, that the town council president at her discretion or his or her discretion can give these days off with notice to the town council. If it is more than 3 days, it has to be approved by the town council. Because right now it could be anything.
Okay, so I think, may I suggest, are you suggesting that the second sentence of F should then read any request for additional paid time over 3 days?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Chris?
So my only comment to that is, and I understand where you're coming from, but let's say for the first 4 months, I don't take any time. But then I get to October, and my granddaughter now has to move from Ohio to Florida, and it takes me 4 days to do it. I would get my 2 days. All I was looking for was somebody to say, okay, take the other 2 days. You know, that's kind of where I was. I'm not looking to get any extra time, believe me. It was just a matter of trying to any kind of family issue that may come up. It's anyway, I just figured I needed to talk to somebody, so I assumed the council president would be the person to speak to. It had nothing to do with, believe me, any additional time. I don't plan on taking any vacation while I'm here.
I understand what Donna's saying, though. My only question would be that if somebody wants some sort of checks and balances, that's fine. But, you know, if that were something like that were to happen, well, then that can't get approved till we have another council meeting.
Right.
So if we don't have a council meeting for 2 weeks and somebody says, oh, you know, I got to go help my granddaughter, you know, move this weekend, that's the only. So Mike, do you have any suggestion on this?
Trish.
I just.
I mean, you know, I will say that I take Chris's point validly. We just, the idea of giving the council president wasn't the idea that the council president was just going to approve, like, you know, 7 days off every month. It was just to give the discretion for when something needed to be, something that came up unexpected. That's all it was. Mr. Cotter was very clear to Nancy and I that he really didn't intend to take more than 2 days off, even if he had an opportunity to do so, because he's got so much work to do, and he's probably going to be here for the 6 months and you know, take maybe a long weekend here and there. But other than that, so we took it as word. That's why we left it as the council president's discretion.
Trish.
Yes, Denise.
It's unrealistic to think that if Chris tomorrow calls you and says he has something, he has an emergency and he needs to take 5 days off, that you cannot approve it. I think it's unrealistic expectation for us to say that he could not get it because we could not have a town council meeting.
And that's kind of what was the motivating factor, because this was an interim appointment and we didn't expect someone in 6 months to take, a 2-week vacation, because it wasn't the expectation, because it's an interim appointment to begin with. So that's just the rationale. I think Ms. Cook's points are well taken. I don't know if it fits in, obviously, if this was a full-time appointment, I think the language would be a lot different than what we have now for interim appointment. So we're just recognize the fact that it was an interim, but I respect the council. If they want to put that check in there, that's fine.
Okay, I think it was, this is Donna. I think that was very helpful to have this dialogue. I can see where people are coming from, and I am listening to what everybody is saying. But when you just read this, I mean, these questions come to you. Well, it did to me, as to what the heck does this mean? Could it be like, 4 weeks off at a time, or I mean, there was just nothing to, I guess I will just have to, I will pull the amended, and we'll leave it as is, hoping that everyone will be okay with it and it would go along fine. And hopefully there's no need for any emergency where someone's having a problem.
Hopefully.
So I
Thank you.
think that would be fair.
So I think it's a parliamentarian. She's withdrawing her motion. Who seconded that motion to amend? Was it
There
seconded?
was never a second.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I thought John seconded. Okay, never mind. Is there a second to the motion then?
No, there's no need for a second to withdraw the motion to amend. So we're now back on the original motion to ratify the contract.
Oh, that's what
I
I
seconded the first motion.
That's what I was saying. John seconded the first motion. That was what I was trying to say. So there's a motion and a second. Any other comments? Okay. In that case, we'll take a call vote.
So it's just the clock.
Steve?
Yeah, this is Steve. Yeah, I have a question about the wording on page 3 under salary. It reads, employer agrees to pay employee for this service rendered pursuant hereto an annual gross salary of $1,500 per week. The wording there seems very awkward to me. Is it just me, or I don't know if it's worth changing it, but if somebody else also thinks that's worded incorrectly, then I think we need to address it.
I agreed that it's $1,500 a week. I'm not looking for anything else. So
No, that's not my point at all. It's just the wording.
No, I get
Talk in terms of annual salary, and then talk in terms of weekly salary.
Yeah,
So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
That's a good catch. We could change that. We just cross it out. It's a weekly salary of $1,500, gross salary $1,500 per week. Correct.
Okay, so what are we crossing off?
Annual.
What is
Annual?
that on a fortnight?
So a gross salary of $1,500 per week.
Per week instead of annual, right? We had an annualized number there. We took it out
Right.
Okay,
because it's a 6-month appointment.
right. Okay,
Madam President,
Yes, John.
one more technicality. Under section 3 termination, letter A, it says unilateral termination by employee. If employee resigns his position with employer, the employee shall give the employer 90, and then it says in parentheses 30 days notice.
Ah, there you go. Good call.
Huh?
Nice catch.
Good catch, John.
30 days.
It should be 30.
It should be 30 days.
30 or 90?
30.
Councilor Driggs, this does prove that lawyers do make mistakes, as you know.
A
lot.
Know that?
There's a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote. Councilor Driggs? Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
yes,
Councilor Perry?
Yes.
Councilor Clark?
Yes.
Councilor DiMederos?
Yes,
And I'm a yes too.
Thank you.
Did Nancy vote? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I don't think Councilor Driggs voted.
Okay,
did vote yes.
thank you.
And can I just say, Chris Cotta, as one who abstained, I appreciated your 3-day at work report, and thank you for the energy you're putting into it.
Thank you.
And finally, our last item is approval of town council minutes, special council meeting minutes, March 17, 2020. Councilor DiMederos abstains absent. Regular council meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2020, and executive session minutes of March 23rd, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Yes, John is motioning to.
Motion, yes. Second.
Second.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Councilor Driggs,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
Aye.
Donna,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Councilor
I
Perry,
didn't hear.
Yes.
Councilor Clark,
Yes.
Councilor DiMederos,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, which brings us to the end of our evening. So
Motion to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn and a second.
Second.
Can we do this in
Joe
all,
Perry.
or do we have to do a roll call for this one, Mr. Solicitor?
Let's live on the edge and we'll do a voice vote. How's that?
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye, aye, aye.
Anybody opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Everybody stay safe. Everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Councilor DiMederos, for all your hard work.
Absolutely.